What was your fuck it ill deal with the consequences later moment? Let me know in the comments below. I stayed up with my friends playing video games online until the sun started rising. I'm in my mid-30s and that level of sleep deprivation the next day was worse than a hangover. Every time I tell myself, I'll just get gas before I drive to work tomorrow, and then find myself running 15 minutes late. You'd think I would learn at some point. For a serial procrastinator like me, this is my whole life. Sometimes, I have to postpone those dealings with consequences too. It's an art as well as science. Credit cards. Oh man, I wanna fight 18-year-old me. Was about to hit a tree while snowboarding. Either break my board on it to lessen the blow or break my body on it. Chose to protect my board. Regretted ever since. Gestures vaguely to everything around me. I had developed feelings for a coworker. Small company. About 20 people. We kind of flirted at work and some people were starting to suspect something, but we managed to keep it professional. One night we had a few drinks. Could not decide to part ways. One thing led to another. The morning after, when we woke up together, neither of us could muster the strength to go to work. She called in sick, and a few minutes later I sent an email to use a day off, as things were quite slow at work anyway. But we knew all too well that the both of us not showing up, with coworkers aware of our plans to get drinks together the night before, well, we weren't going to fool anyone. And the following weeks, months were pretty awkward indeed. We never made it official. For the time it lasted. I was a teenager in a friend's car. We were smoking weed. Then he was getting pulled over. Driver said, "Throw it, man." Quote. I was like, he'll see that anyway. And this car smells a lot like weed anyway. Also, it's good. Let me just finish this real quick. So the cop arrived at the car and I was this kid sitting there, smoking weed. The look on his face was kind of hilarious. I wasn't raised to be wasteful, for goodness sake. When she says, "Come in me," I blew past a state trooper doing about 140 miles per hour. 225 km/h. On an empty highway just because I was testing how fast the car could go. I have ADHD. My whole life is a long, fuck it I'll deal with it later moment. My abusive ex was away on a 3-day conference. And I had decided that the only way to get away from him was to kill myself. I spent day 1 prepping and was gonna do it on day 2. When I woke up the morning of day 2 I had a fuck it, fuck him moment and called my sister, who called the rest of my family, and they drove 3 hours to come get us, and we went to get my 10-year-old son. Ex had me isolated in a house I could not leave without help, and kept my son in another house. But that day he was with a relative to ex. We left everything. I had no money, no friends, and no idea what to do next. But when I was sitting in the car with my brother and my son, and the rest of our family in the car behind us, on our way to a new town and a new life, that feeling of freedom was like being high. And all the other things like money, school and housing, and my ex's reaction, did not matter in that moment. Offering my longtime best friend a neck massage turned into some foreplay, then a conversation about not ruining our friendship with sex, followed by a fuck it, and a night in bed. 3 children later, still going strong. Quitting any job whenever I want, regardless of having money or not, I'll figure it out. Because you won't have me feeling trapped and like you have control over my life. Been there, done that. Traveling to meet the guy the first met online. Consequences? Married now for 9 years. Me and my now wife's 3rd date. Our XARS got locked in this garage at a garden we were visiting. I ended up staying at her parents' house as they were the closest people to the location we were at. We slept in the same room. After like 15 minutes of excruciating tension, she said, "Sue, you just wanna fuck?" I replied, I don't have any condoms, she said. I'm on the pill. Worked out cause we are now married 7 years later and no kids. I used to work at an animation studio until a few months ago. It was an 8 to 5 with unpaid OT. Far from home and shitty pay. It was a terrible experience. Only reason I stuck around so long is because I was in a tricky situation and wanted my credits on their project. In January this year I got fucking tired of working long hours in an office job. Because I'd been employed since October and I hadn't been paid since then because the salaries had been delayed due to budgeting issues. This was a really bad time for me. Family was over. And for once I had no money to treat them to something nice. All because I chose to work at that filthy studio. I said fuck it. Took a week-long vacation without informing anyone and after coming back handed in my resignation. In the form of a middle finger for all the miserable past experiences. Waking up wasted and naked next to my brother's wife. I changed my secondary school choice last minute from a school 15 miles away to the one a 2-minute walk from my parents' house. I figured I would deal with the consequences. Time came around to see if I was accepted into the school. I was accepted into the original one. 15 miles away. Confused AF. My mother grins and says she changed it back to the original one before sending it off. I wasn't even mad. I regretted my decision about a week after I changed it. The original school was a much better school and I'm now still the only person in my family to do all of the education stuff. Quit my job in a fit of anger and hurt. Without any backup plan. I was an assistant manager at a dollar store. When my manager said that the DM had told her she had too many full-time assistants and would have to downgrade someone to part-time. There was the girl who was basically the next manager in training. So of course not her. Another woman who was a hard worker. Plus she had just started paying for insurance and needed the money. So not her. Me. Sole provider for a family of 4 while my husband worked on getting his GED for better jobs. Admittedly not the best or hardest worker. But I was good enough to have been promoted from cashier after 6 months and trained for 2 weeks or less. Was generally reliable and rarely called out. Never had any issues with stocking correctly, unloading trucks, or balancing the registers and submitting paperwork at the end of the day. Then there was Pat. Pat needed money as the sole provider for her household, true. But everyone had been struggling to train her for 4 months and she still couldn't do returns on her own. Often had problems with balancing her till. Couldn't be left in charge of the store alone unless the most experienced and knowledgeable cashier was working and then needed someone else to come close the store for her. Regularly stocked items in the wrong places. Straight up lied more than once saying she had checked items and they didn't fit. They did. Told the beer order guy, IDK how to do that, I'll call someone else for it later, bye. Even though the guy was great and had been working with us long enough that all I had to do was tell him how many of each one we had left and he would place an order for us. Guess who my manager decided to downgrade? Me. With the excuse that I was technically the newest because I had taken an extended leave during my pregnancy. I panicked the next day over how stupid it was and started thinking of ways to crawl back and kiss ass. At least part-time would have been something while my husband tried to get another job. Thankfully, me quitting turned out to be a good thing. Because a week later a friend of ours told my husband that his job was hiring. Now, I get to stay at home with the kids and we still make almost double what we were when we were both working full-time jobs. I had put in vacation for 2 days to go back home for my grandpa's b-day 4 months in advance. Request gets accepted. 2 weeks before my vacation. There is a shift change and now my trip would take up a whole week of work. I inform my boss that I'll be taking a whole week now. He tells me that's fine, and to go update the vacation request I go to HR to update my request. Instead of just changing the date range, the HR person tries to delete the request and make a new one. Only problem is we were in a vacation blackout time. No new requests get accepted for that month because of workload. So they end up canceling my vacation and then go, "Oh whoops, looks like you can't put in a new request, too bad." My boss gets pissed and has my back, but HR isn't budging. Not the first time our department has been screwed over. I tell HR, I'm still going on vacation. I'm not gonna miss out on seeing my family because you guys are incompetent. Fire me or don't fire me. I don't really care at this point. My boss tells me to enjoy my time off and we can worry about stuff when I get back from break. Grandpa's B-Day was great. Had fun seeing the family and friends from back home. I come back after a week and I'm still employed. Boss and boss's boss explained to HR that I'm the only one in our department who's qualified to do what I do. And if they want to lose a bunch of money getting a third-party contractor to replace me, then that's their right too. They'll just have to explain to the finance officer and general manager why we'd be bleeding money. All of a sudden, I don't work there anymore, but I hope my old boss is doing well. He was a homie. Side story. That same boss took 2 weeks of vacation when the Shadowlands expansion of WoW released. Man's got his priorities straight, haha. When I asked him what did he tell HR and his boss, he was like, those people don't need to know what I do or don't do with my vacation time. I'm taking my vacation time anytime I drink. But fortunately I have anxiety and it just ends up with me doing seemingly normal things like saying hi to strangers. I stopped attending 3 online classes 3/4 into the semester, even though I was doing well in them. I just lost any desire suddenly. And I lied to my parents about my grades. Quit my job when I was 24 and went traveling around the world for a year. Parents wanted me to buy a house with my savings, but I spent it all on seeing the world instead. Drunk me often fucks next day me over. All drunk me needs to do is slow down. But he thinks, why is my drink empty? What the fuck? Huh. Looks like a lot of others have this problem. Seems I'm not alone at being alone. 100 billion hungover people looking for a cure. Sting really overestimated population growth in the 90s. My dog got stolen and was missing for over a month. Someone anonymously called me and said they were going to drop off the dog at front of my house. Whether or not someone was home. I just started a new job. I couldn't find my boss to ask permission to leave. And I just bolted home. Pretty much all of adolescence. Currently dealing with it. High cholesterol. Constant tinnitus. Bad joints. Nutritional deficiencies. It wasn't until November that I finally accepted that, just because you technically can doesn't mean you should. 37 years old and finally an adult, it's boring. I did too much MDMA on a night out and blacked out. When I came back to Earth I was on a sidewalk at around 4 a.m. with no wallet or keys and my phone was about to die. I called the guy I was with and he said he was on his way home and that I should go home too because I was obviously too fucked up. Couldn't get back into my apartment due to the lack of keys, so I called a friend who I knew would be awake. We kept partying and we ended up having a foursome with some girls he had over. The next morning I got a lift home and got my spare key from my parents and slept on their couch till the afternoon. Replacing everything in my wallet and getting my car reassigned to 2 new keys cost me just under 1.2 thousand Australian dollars, and the guy that I was out with was my colleague who spent all of the next Monday laughing at me. Still no sign of my wallet or keys, lol. Found a new coffee shop in town which was so good I immediately went back for a second and a third large. So 6 shots in like 10 minutes. Regretted it both throughout the day and during the multiple toilet visits. Edit. The cafe was called Gumption by Coffee Alchemy. So good. Quit a new job that had me an anxious wreck every morning. To the point I couldn't even have breakfast, so glad I did it. But I'm never that impulsive. I'm okay now, happily employed in a position somewhere else. I hiked through 6 miles of public land early one morning doing some preseason deer scouting for the upcoming deer season. Took several hours to complete and I was exhausted when I got to my truck. Only to see my best friend had texted me at some point asking if I want to join him on an overnight camping trip. Said fuck it, got home, grabbed my camp pack, met him at another spot on public land and we hiked another 4 miles in before setting up camp. That night and the next week, my legs felt as if they were ready to rip themselves off. Might not sound like a lot of miles, but when 90% of it is off trail bushwhacking, climbing over logs and through thick brush, it's a good bit of work. My 20s? Gotta go to work but wife wants sex. I'll take the hit at work, I can afford it. Pretty much every left turn I make. Someone violated my son when he was 2 years old. I set the guy's car on fire and shot his house up. Never dealt with any consequences over it, fuck it. Percent of my childhood, teenage years, and 20s. What was your fuck it ill deal with the consequences later moment? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more.